So she leaves, and she was like, you know what? She'll just go home to her dad. And so she called her dad, and that's where she was going to move the next day. So she gets her stuff. She's going to pack up her VW. It's not fully fixed, but it would be enough for her to get over to the trailer park where she's from. And Pike's like, I'll just take you, because your car's it's gonna stall every time you stop. So Pike takes her over, and when he sees the condition of that trailer, and he sees she apparently has a stepbrother, and he's kind of looking at her weird, and it's just Pike was like, you ain't staying here. So he took her stuff and he put it in the back of the truck, and she's like, what are you doing? He's like, you can't stay here. I'm sorry, this is horrible. It's like no one will look out for you here. Like, this isn't safe. And like, what if your little stepbrother, like if his friends come, like this is not a safe environment. And so she gives up, honestly, because she didn't really want to move back, but she didn't want to be a burden either. But she agreed, so she gets in the truck and she goes back to Pike's place. So they come to a new agreement. She's going to pay one of the bills in the house and a grocery bill, because that'll make her feel better, because she wants to feel like she's contributing. She's like, Cole had decided he was going to go stay with Elena. And he had told his dad, let her stay here as long as she needs. And so she's like, but she wants to help. She wants to help out, as much as she can. And he's like, but the goal is for you to save. She's like, I'm still saving a lot of money, but I want to contribute. So he caves and he lets her do that. So it was raining really bad in the city, like later that week. And the city needed help putting up sandbags, because I guess in this town the flooding gets really bad. So they were like calling for all volunteers to like come downtown and like help put the sandbags up and stuff. So she goes, and while they're doing it, Alexis, who is a frequent person at Grounders and apparently sleeps with anything, is flirting with Pike. And Pike doesn't look like he's not enjoying it. Like, he's laughing, he's blushing, and Jordan's just getting like super jealous. And she's trying not to stare, but of course she's staring. And so once they leave and they're in the truck, they wind up going mudding. And she has a ball doing that. They have a blast. And so when they get back home, they go outside to like rinse off the mud. And they didn't have a lot of mud on them, but they still did it, right? So while she's rinsing him off, she's like touching his chest and stuff. And it's getting really intimate. Like super intimate. So Jordan starts to take off her bra. And he was like, oh my gosh, like he was about to lose it. Like, he had been like finding the strength not to give in, but he was like, he wanted her so incredibly bad. And so he's like, you don't really want me. He's like, it's just, you're missing Cole, and it's because I'm here, and it's just screwing with your head, And she's like, that's not true. She's like, this isn't the first time that I've thought about wanting you to touch me. And he's breathing so hard because he wants her so bad, but he's like, I can't do this. He was like, you just need to go find someone else and get laid, and then you'll be okay. And so Jordan's like, fine, I'll go find me someone else to screw. She was like, because it's probably been so long for you, you don't even know what to do with the woman. And when she said that, all bets were off. Pike lost it. Pike went to her, he grabbed her, and they started having the hottest make-out session ever. And so while they're kissing, they hear the door open, and it's Cole. He's like, Dad, you here? And so she has to like hide around the corner so Cole can't see her. And so they were like, shoot, like, because they almost got caught. So They're like, that can't happen again. Like, we got to stop that. So that's the agreement. So a few nights later, Jordan, she's going to go babysit for the next door neighbor who's a single dad. Pike doesn't like him. But she's going to babysit for him. And so Pike knows that normally this neighbor, he likes to sleep with the babysitters. So he's like, how about you just have the kids come over here and they can just get in the pool, make a night of it. And she's like, okay, cool. Cool. Like that. So the kids come over. They're having a good time. They're having a ball. And her ex-boyfriend, when she goes to like put the kids to sleep because it's getting late, she puts the kids to sleep. And her ex-boyfriend, Jay, comes over. And he pulls up in the yard, and he's like, hey, I heard Jordan was still staying here. And Pike loses it because he knows this is the guy that used to hurt her. And it's like, that's not even going to happen again. And he's like, you need to leave. And the dude's like, what did I do? And Pike's like, you better never come around here again. He's like, because if I catch you around here again, he's like, I'm going to bury you in one of those. I'm going to bury you in cement. And you're going to be underneath one of these brand new buildings that I'm building. He's like, and I don't want you around my son either. You know, because he's just a bad influence. So the guy runs off and he leaves. And so a little while later they go to a block party. She actually had a date with a guy that she was going to go tubing with. But Pike made her feel bad about it because he's like, oh, tubing is nothing, just an excuse to get drunk and hook up. But it's kind of like, okay, but you said that's what I need to do. But she winds up canceling because she wants to go to the block party. And while she's there, she's talking to Dutch's, his wife. And, she's just saying how good of a guy, Pike really is a good dude. He really did give up everything for his kid. And, Lindsay, she manipulated him. She did all kind of stuff. And he's just always been about trying to do the right thing. And he's given everything for Cole, every single thing. And it's kind of at that moment she's like, you know what? I can't put him in this position. As much as she wants, Pike, she's like, you know what? I think it's better if, I make sure I keep this distance. We don't need to do this. So the guy that she was actually going to go tubing with, he's at the block party as well. And so he's like, hey, some of the high school friends, we're going to A&W, have some root beer floats, like we did back in the day. And she's like, all right, I'll go. So she goes with them. There's the girls. And she doesn't have anything in common with these people. Their biggest thing is they bought this expensive handbag and they weren't supposed to. They don't have real life problems like she has. And so she just can't relate, even though she's 19, but they're in two different worlds. And so she calls her sister to come and pick her up because she's like, this just, this ain't my scene. So her sister comes to pick her up. She goes home and she sees Alexis's car in the driveway. And she immediately gets pissed. And she's like, what is she doing here? And so her sister's like, she probably wants to come over. She wants to have a little fun with Pike. So she gets out and she didn't see him anywhere in the house. So she decides she's going to cause some ruckus. So she goes upstairs. She blasts her music like a whole temper tantrum. Blasts her music. Slamming doors in the laundry room. I mean, she just went on a whole little binge. And so Pike comes up and he's like, what's up? What is wrong with you? And the Alexis girl too. And so she's like, well, I guess I better go. And so she leaves. And so Pike is like, why would you do that? And she's like, you could have done a lot better than Alexis. She sleeps with anything that comes in the bar. And he's like, Who I mess with has nothing to do with you. It's not your business. And that's when old girl goes to seduction mode, and she tells him, even if you slept with her tonight, you were still going to think about me, and how much you wanted it to be me, and how much you want your face inside of my cooch. It was just like she just went on a whole nother level, and she knew what she was doing because she knew he was gonna break. It was so funny because it was like just earlier that day she had decided, she wasn't gonna bother him, she was gonna let him be. But when it came to a possibility of somebody else being there, she was like, this is mine. And she meant that. And so he tried to not do it, but he just caved. And so they spend that night, they screwed all night. And even in the morning when they woke up, they screwed again. And that next morning when he goes down for work and he's getting ready to leave, and there's a knock on the door, and it's Lindsay. And she's like, how could you let my son go and stay with some other hooch and let her stay here? She's not your kid. And he's like, I told him to stay. He decided to leave. And she's like, and he told her, he was like, and it's not up to you who I rent a room to. That has nothing to do with you. Well, he has a certain look, as most people do after they've had an orgasm. And she looked at him and she goes, oh, now I see why you wanted him out. And he goes, what are you talking about? She says, you forget, I know what you look like after you've came. And I'm like, oh shoot, she is the wrong person to know this info. And so he was like, I don't know what you're talking about, but you can leave. He was just done. And he kind of went into her because there was a lot of built up frustration, and he just kind of let her have it, which she deserved. Absolutely. And Lindsay's like, you're not doing your job as a father. Cole quit his job 3 days ago. And she's like, he's like, I didn't know that. She's like, exactly, because you're not paying attention to him. You're just worried about that little new piece of ass. And so he's like, no, you don't really care about him. The only reason why you're upset that he quit his job is because you can't take half of his money anymore. And then she starts looking crazy. And he's like, you know what? Just get out my house. And so she slaps him before she leaves. And he's like, he didn't even care. He's like, I'm glad I got my son, but I wish I could have had it by another person. Because she's just so horrible. So later on that day, they were supposed to have like a little date night, Pike and Jordan. So she had ordered the pizza. She had the movie ready, the 80s movie flick going, and 5 o'clock rolls around, there's no Pike. 6 o'clock rolls around, there's no Pike. So now it's almost 7. So she's been calling his phone, but he's not answering. So she calls Dutch. She's like, hey, did you guys work late? And Dutch is like, we've been done for hours. And she's like, oh, so he really stood me up, like he's avoiding me. So she says, okay, bet. No problem. So she leaves, and this happens to be the night of the wet t-shirt contest. So she goes to the hook. And so when he gets home, he's thinking maybe she's in the room, but when he opens the door, she's not there. He's like, what the hell? So he calls her, and Jordan's like, hey. And he's like, where are you? She's like, I'm out with friends. But he could tell by the noise in the back, like she was at a bar. So he was like, I'm sorry about being late. I just got caught up at work. And she goes, no, you're lying. You stood me up. You didn't work late. And he was like, I'm sorry. It's just that, it can't happen anymore. She's like, fine. And she hangs up the phone. Like, she's good. She's like, I'll be home late. See you later. So he's thinking like, you know what? She's at that hook. And so he goes down there and he's looking for her. And he didn't see her at first, and he kind of had a moment, a slight epiphany, where he was like, you know what, she's an adult, and if she's gonna do this, then I can't come in here storming